The Absolute Beginner's Guide to Cybersecurity Part 1. My name is Alex, I'm going to be your instructor, and this video is just to welcome you officially to the course, but also to give you a breakdown of what you're going to learn. Before I talk about the curriculum though, I need to stress that this course is meant for complete beginners to the world of cybersecurity, so please don't take this course and expect that by the end of the course, you will have learned all the skills that you need to break into the CIA database server or whatever. Okay, that's not the point of this course. The point of this course is to introduce you to the basics of cybersecurity, and then with the knowledge you gain from this course, you can then take more advanced courses under cybersecurity if you would like to. I should also mention that this course is constantly getting updated, so if you see me talking to you with a different kind of background, or I have more hair on my head, or I'm wearing a different t-shirt, don't worry, it's just me updating the course in a different location, so don't freak out, it's all the exact same course, alright? So, let me introduce you to the curriculum, and what you're looking at right here is going to be the platform on Udemy. You might be taking this course on a different platform, like let's say Skillshare or Pact or even on Live Cyber. Don't worry, it's the exact same course. The only reason why I'm using the platform Udemy is because about 60 to 70% of all students enrolled in this course typically come from Udemy, so I'm simply going with the majority. Okay, so in section 1, I'm going to introduce you to the general world of cybersecurity. We'll talk about some very important popular concepts and terms used in cybersecurity. We'll talk about the difference between information security and cybersecurity. I will also introduce you to some basics of networking, where we'll talk about things like computer protocols, TCP, IP, and so on. We're going to move on to section 2, where we'll talk about hackers. This is a very important section because imagine if we lived in a world where there was no cybercrime, there were no cyber criminals or hackers. We won't need cybersecurity, right? It'd be like living in a world where there's no crime. We don't have any burglars or armed robbers or things like that. We won't need the police, right? So it's the same kind of logic in here. It's important for you to understand hackers though, understand their motivations, understand the different types of hackers out there, because believe it or not, hackers aren't just always bad. You do have some hackers that are kind of complex in what they do, and it really depends on who you talk to. To some people, these kinds of hackers might be heroes. To some others, they might be villains. So we're going to talk about hackers, their motivations. We'll also take a look at the hacking methodology. There is no general standard as to how hackers hack, but there are processes that are very similar from one hack to another. So we'll talk about that in this section. We'll also take a look at social engineering, which is my favorite aspect in all of cybersecurity. I love social engineering. We're going to talk about that in section 2. Now in section 3, attacks, okay? We'll talk about all the different ways how hackers and cyber criminals try to attack us and steal our data and corrupt our data. There will also be, in section 4, malware. Now, to be honest, I could have put malware in section 3 because malware is a form of attack. The reason why malware has its own special, separate sections is because malware is a very big family. And in this family, you have different types of attacks, basically, viruses, trojans, and so on. So we're going to have an entire section dedicated to the despicable family of malware. And then, of course, in section 5, we'll now take a look at defenses. How do we protect ourselves against malware, cyber attacks, and of course, cyber criminals? We'll take a look at all the most important and popular forms of defense. Now, section 6 is going to be a very special section. I called it cybersecurity at the workplace. The reason why I added this section is because the vast majority of students taking this course are actually employees working in companies out there. So this section is meant a little bit more for regular employees who are not under cybersecurity. The idea here, the point of this section is to introduce such employees to some of the basic concepts and policies that the cybersecurity staff in their company will introduce, so that when you actually go to your workplace, at your place of work, the cybersecurity manager comes out and says, hey, we need BYOD management, you would understand, oh, I know what BYOD management is, right? You know what cybersecurity policies are. You'll understand the security versus ease of access paradox, which is very important. and a few other policies like that. So this section is going to be dedicated a bit more to regular employees who are not under cybersecurity. But hey, if you are a cybersecurity staff, you will also find this particular section useful as well, because I'll introduce you to some concepts that you can employ or use at your place of work. And then section 7, cyber warfare. Very, very, very important section, because we now live in a world where cyber warfare is a real thing. Cyber attacks against countries, cyber attacks against big companies. So we'll take a look at a few examples of what these are. Let me at this point also mention that depending on when you watch this course or when you're watching this video, there might be some slight changes, because if tomorrow, for example, there's going to be a huge cyber attack against a company or a country, there's a very good chance I will add that lecture in this particular section. So maybe you're watching this in the future, you might see a few defenses, or you might see some additional lectures in this particular section. And of course, in section 8, we'll simply go ahead to wrap the entire course. So that's basically going to be the entire course in a nutshell. Again, the idea and purpose behind this course is to introduce you to the world of cybersecurity, give you all the basic skills, and then with the knowledge you've gained, you can then go on to take more advanced courses, which, by the way, I do have more advanced courses if you're interested. But also, if you want to become a cybersecurity professional, you want to sit for cybersecurity certification exams, this course will give you kind of like the foundation upon which you can then begin to gather more skills to take those certifications and progress in your career as a cybersecurity professional at your place of work. So welcome once again to the course. Thank you so much. In the very next video, I'm going to introduce to you who I am and all the ways how you can contact me if you need any help. I'll see you then. Cybersecurity and information security. Now, in the real world, these two terms are used interchangeably all the time. And to be honest, no one's going to really care whether you said cybersecurity when you should have said information security, or when you said information security when you should have said cybersecurity. No one's going to really care. But because this is a course on cybersecurity, I feel I need to be a bit more strict and just tell you the actual differences between information security and cybersecurity. Let me ask you a question, yeah? See, this is my storage device, my physical hard drive, right? I've got some very, very important data in here. Me keeping this storage device in my safe or making sure that nobody steals this device, would you classify my actions under cybersecurity or information security? I'll give you a few seconds to think about it. You thought about it? Okay. All right. So if you said cybersecurity, you would be wrong, because it's not cybersecurity. It's actually information security. Okay. Enough rambling. What's the difference? Cybersecurity deals specifically with protecting your data from cyber threats. Threats that exist on the internet, threats that exist in the cyber world. But when you're talking about information security, it's a lot broader. It's all about protecting your data from various kinds of threats, whether they're threats that exist in the cyber world or even from physical threats like thieves who may want to steal my physical hard drive. That is information security. So information security is a bit more broad. It's broader than cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is a bit more niche because it focuses specifically on protecting data from cyber threats. With that being said, in cybersecurity, we also have some special branches like cyber law, cyber crime. We also have cyber warfare. When one country launches a cyber attack against another country, that falls under cyber warfare, which is under cybersecurity. Basically, when you hear the word cyber attack, cybersecurity, always. 9 times out of 10. There was a cyber attack, think of cybersecurity. But when you're protecting data from physical threats, from fire outbreaks, from flooding, things like that, that's more of information security. To make this very, very simple, I would recommend you just use the term cybersecurity, because the vast majority of times you will be dealing with cyber threats. All the things you talk about, the things you do, will be related mostly to cyber threats and not necessarily physical threats. So Again, in the real world, no one's going to care whether you said, oh, cybersecurity. You should have said information security. That's not actually cybersecurity. No, unless there's some sort of, but no one's really going to care whether you said information security or cybersecurity. But you should know what the differences actually are. So, if you still need more help, maybe you still don't quite understand the differences between cybersecurity and information security, I will see you in the next class. Let's talk about the CIA triad. And no, I am not referring to the Central Intelligence Agency. I am referring to a model that is designed to guide every information security policy or cybersecurity policy of an organization. So behind every security policy, you have three core fundamental parts, which makes up the CIA triad. So what exactly is this CIA triad? Well, the C stands for confidentiality, I stands for integrity, and the A stands for availability. So what exactly do these three things mean? Well, first off, we have confidentiality. This limits access to information. It basically makes sure that only people with the right clearance have access to that information. And as such, it also ensures privacy. It makes sure that data is kept safe and secure from the general public. Only people with the right access would be able to view certain information or data. That's all confidentiality is all about. And there are several methods by which we can achieve this. We have encryption, which we'll talk about later. We have biometrics, which would involve things like fingerprint scans, eye scans, voice sampling, and so on and so forth. We also have passwords, of course, probably the most popular confidentiality method out there. And we also have security tokens as well. Next up is integrity, and this ensures that data that's been sent from one point arrives at its destination without any alteration. It basically makes sure that data remains consistent and accurate. It makes sure that data has not been tampered with in any way. And there are different methods by which we can achieve this. We have the use of user access controls, and we also have checksums, which we'll talk about later as well. And finally, we have availability, which ensures that data is available at all times. Whenever people need to work on data, it is right there waiting for them. And there are different methods of achieving this. We have backups, we have hardware maintenance and repairs, and we also have disaster recovery as well, which we'll talk about a bit later as well. So to summarize, well, confidentiality will involve sets of rules that limit access to information. That's basically all what confidentiality is all about. Integrity, on the other hand, is the assurance that information has not been compromised. It's not been altered, it remains pure and unaffected. And finally, availability is a guarantee of reliable access to information by authorized people, by people with the necessary clearance. So these three together make up the CIA triad, and it is the backbone of every information security policy or cybersecurity policy of an organization. A cybersecurity professional, or you just want to improve your overall knowledge of information security, then you need to understand what computer protocols are. So what exactly is a protocol? Well, a protocol is a set of rules that determine how computers communicate with each other. So if you have computers on the same network trying to exchange information, or maybe you even have a computer trying to access a website, you have a protocol or even different protocols working behind the scenes. Now, a protocol would also govern how an internet document gets transmitted to a computer screen. So again, when you go online, if you're using Firefox or Chrome or Safari, and you try to access a website, all of the images and text and videos that you see on your screen, you have protocols working behind the scenes to ensure that you get to receive all that information. And of course, protocols will also determine what part of the conversation comes at which time, and also how the conversation ends. Remember that we're talking about the conversation between computers and networks here. So let's start off with the two most popular protocols out there, which would be HTTP and HTTPS. So HTTP, this is the hypertext transfer protocol. And the reason why I said this is one of the most popular protocols is because it determines how browsers and web servers communicate. So basically, HTTP is the major protocol of the internet. Whenever you go online, whether you're trying to buy something or you're trying to access a website, or even if you're trying to play games online, you have HTTP working behind the scenes. Now, one thing about HTTP that separates it from other protocols out there is that it is referred to as a stateless system. Now, what this means is that whenever your web browser makes a request to a web server, once that request has been satisfied, the communication between your web browser and that web server will be dropped. The connection will no longer be maintained. So it will only be reopened whenever, again, you try to access another website or maybe even another page on the current website. So in such a scenario where connections are dropped between the person making the request or the system accepting the request, that's called a stateless system. Now, HTTPS is the secure version of HTTP. The S just stands for secured. So the one thing that separates HTTPS from HTTP is that with HTTPS, you have something called encryption, which means that all the information and text that you see on that website will be protected and secured from cyber criminals or hackers. So before we move on to other protocols, I wanted to give you real-life examples of HTTP and HTTPS in action. Now, right now you can see I'm on the website, onepage.hascopedia.com, and you can see that we have this information right here. Now, if I click on it, it says your connection to this site is not secure. Now, the reason why you would see this is because we don't have any HTTPS. The basic protocol working right here is HTTP. But take a look at a site like Amazon. Now you will see we have HTTPS right over here, and you can also see the message that says secure. Now what this means is that HTTPS is enforced, is the major protocol in use right here, and this is very, very important. Whenever you are on a site where sensitive information would be exchanged, maybe credit card information or PIN numbers or things like that, HTTPS should be the major protocol in operation and not HTTP. HTTPS should be the major protocol in operation. So that's just one useful tip out there. Whenever you're trying to buy something online and you are on a store or an e-commerce store, if they don't have HTTPS, that would be a very bad idea to shop in such a website. All right, so moving on to the next two, which would be the SSL and SSH. Now, SSL stands for the Secure Sockets Layer, and it's used by HTTPS to provide encryption. So whenever you see websites that have the HTTPS protocol, that means that they also have the Secure Sockets Layer, because it's actually the Secure Sockets Layer that provides the necessary encryption. Now, SSH stands for Secure Shell, and it's used specifically by programmers and network administrators. So whenever a network administrator needs to log into the back end of a website or a web server to make certain changes, they will very often use SSH to connect to the web server because it is very, very secure. Now, one thing you should know is that they are technically not protocols. SSL and SSH are not technically protocols, but they are always used by security protocols like the HTTPS, SFTP, and some other ones out there for them to fully operate. And that's why we constantly mention SSL and SSH whenever we're talking about protocols. So moving on to some other protocols out there, we also have the FTP and SFTP. Now, FTP stands for the File Transfer Protocol, and it governs how files are transmitted from one computer to another. So whenever you're trying to download files from another computer or from another web server, you have FTP in operation, or even if you're trying to upload files, documents as well, then FTP would be the protocol in use. Now, SFTP is simply the secured form of the file transfer protocol. So this will provide encryption and make it more secure against cyber criminals and hackers. And let's also talk about the IMAP and SMTP protocols. Now, IMAP is simply the Internet Access Message Protocol, and of course, it controls how internet messages are sent. So whenever you're chatting online, most likely it is the IMAP that is in control right there. While SMTP stands for the Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, and this governs how emails are sent and received. Now, of course, these aren't all the protocols that exist. There are several ones out there, but the ones we've covered are the major ones that you should know about. So that's it for protocols. Thank you so much for watching the video. I will see you in the next class. This is the TCP/IP protocol. Very, very important, very often used in the world of computer security. So what exactly are these? Well, TCP stands for the Transmission Control Protocol. Now, what it does is that it divides a message or file into smaller packets that are transmitted over the internet and then reassembled when the destination is reached. So imagine you wanted to send a very big device or some sort of machinery to a friend of yours who lives across the country. Now, sending the device as one piece might be difficult. So what you can do is to split up the device into smaller pieces. You could pick out the parts one by one, separate the bolts, the nuts, things like that, and then send them in smaller packages. That's basically what TCP does. It splits up data into smaller packets so that they are transmitted more effectively across the internet. Now, IP stands for the Internet Protocol. Now, what this does is that it is responsible for the address of each packet that is sent so that they are sent to the right destination. So that's basically what happens. TCP would split up the data into smaller packets. IP would make sure that all those packets are sent to the right destination. And then when all those packets have arrived at the destination, TCP takes over again and then reassembles all the smaller packets into the original data or file that was sent. So together, we refer to it as the TCP/IP protocols, and they are a set of protocols used to interconnect network devices on the internet, and they are divided into four major layers. And the very first one is the data link layer. This consists of protocols that operate strictly on a link that connects hosts on a network. So whenever you have your computer linking up to the internet, that actual link itself is the data link layer. An example of a protocol that would exist here would be the Ethernet protocol. Now we also have the internet or the networking layer. This connects independent networks together. And this is where you would have the actual IP protocol itself. So the internet layer is all about connecting networks now together and not just single hosts, but major networks. Next, we have the transport layer that handles the actual communication between hosts. And this is where you would find the TCP protocol itself. And then finally, we have the application layer. This standardizes the actual data exchange. And this is where you will have protocols like the HTTP and the FTP. So overall, TCP and IP is very, very popular. They are used for several kinds of communications. They're used mostly on the internet, used for emails. Whenever you're sending emails, you are using TCP, IP. And of course, whenever you're playing video games as well. These are all examples of where the TCP and IP would come into play. So that's it for the TCP IP. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next class.